Children, you have no fish, have you? Jesus asked this of disciples, followers, students, friends of his, the people with whom he endured so much. This is the Gospel of John's recounting of the moments after Jesus has been resurrected. And the Gospel is trying to show us what whole life in the resurrection, life at God's banquet table looks like. Children, you have no fish, have you? The lack of fish, for whatever reason, indicates a lack of more than just fish. For the disciples, some of whom were fishermen, when Simon Peter says he's going fishing, and the others say, we'll go with you, it's what they do. It's who they are. There's no real means of production for them beyond fishing. And they've had to fight for the right to fish and the ability to fish for much of their adult lives. The local government has sought to take away their ability to fish by taxing the living daylights out of their catches and reappropriating those catches for Herod Antipas in order for him to support his own building projects. Jesus, at one point, even moves to the shore of the Sea of Galilee earlier in his ministry to be closer to the activity, to be closer to this action, because a main source of the action, a protest against Herod Antipas, revolved around fish and fishermen and their right to fish and make a living. Children, you have no fish, have you? That's their reality in the moment, and Jesus communicates that this is quite apart from the will of God. The will of God being, we might assume, that there's fish for everyone to eat, that there's enough to feed your family and the next, so long as you're not bent on ruling the seas and dominating the oceans. There's enough. There's always enough at the banquet. We symbolize this enough at the communion table and other parts of our liturgy in the church. And so Carmen is here today as the people of Punta Santiago, Puerto Rico, are not being told by us to put their nets down on the other side. There's no cute or neat angle here. But in different ways and at different times, the people of Puerto Rico have been able to put their nets down on the other side and receive enough. Enough food, enough shelter, power, water, and so forth. The road back to normal life has been long, as we're about to hear. We are grateful to welcome Carmen Ramos Calso to Union this morning. Carmen has been a tireless advocate for Puerto Rico, has made numerous trips back to the island, and will take another one this week, and is, in addition to many other things, a United Church of Christ member. She was recently the moderator of the Hancock Church in Lexington, Massachusetts, where Barbara Callahan serves on staff. Carmen is here today to share some stories which she insists not be called a sermon. So this will be time of meditation where Carmen will share stories of devastation and stories of recovery and hope, of people putting their nets down on the other side again in order to receive a catch, in order to live and support their families once more. People of Union, let us welcome Carmen Ramos Calso.
Good morning, Union Church. Good morning. I bring greetings from Hancock Church, my home church in Lexington, Massachusetts, and from Nuestra Señora del Carmen Parish in Punta Santiago, one of our partners in Puerto Rico. It is such a pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you. Thank you for inviting me this morning to be here with you to share some reflections and give you an update on the relief effort that you have so generously supported, and to share some of the stories that have collected along the way. I can't begin to express my deep gratitude nor thank you enough for the support and generosity for the people of Puerto Rico through the Lexington Unites for Puerto Rico Relief Fund. As a Puerto Rican, the relief effort is personal for me. It is where I grew up. It is where I developed my faith. It is where my extended family lives, where my childhood friends reside. As you all know, on September 20th last year, Category 4 Hurricane Maria struck the island of Puerto Rico with sustained winds of 155 miles an hour, and only 2 weeks after Hurricane Irma had been in the neighborhood. Maria was the worst storm to hit the island in 80 years. The hurricane caused island-wide devastation, ripping wood and tin roofs of homes, twisting metal structures in unrecognizable shapes, downing cell towers, trees, and streetlights, destroying roads and the agriculture, destroying the already fragile power grid, causing an island-wide power outage, and flooding some communities where the residents lost absolutely everything. Unlike previous hurricanes that clipped a corner of the island, Maria made landfall in the southeastern part of Puerto Rico and traveled the entire length of Puerto Rico. And what that meant was that everyone really got affected and suffered major damage, and communities were not able to help each other like they had in previous hurricanes. Heavy rains and flash floods brought by the storm exacerbated the widespread devastation, turning streets into rivers full of debris. The storm disproportionately affected Puerto Rico poorest residents, who have fewer resources on hand to help them recover and rebuild. Many of these people live in rural areas and hard-to-reach areas in the mountains, and are sadly the last ones that will be getting power restored. So after several weeks of crying every time I watched TV and saw the suffering and the devastation, we decided to do something about it at Hancock Church. We organized a community-wide effort under Lexington Unites for Puerto Rico, which involved other communities of faith, town residents, and Friends of Puerto Rico and Lexington. In 4 weeks, we learned about shipping, about containers, and about pallets. Foreign language to us. We bought generators and solar lanterns and water filters and canned goods and flashlights and batteries and diapers and formulas and lots of water. We taught our community about pigeon peas and all kinds of beans eaten in the island, and sorted and packed medical supplies and canned goods and donated goods for days. Thanks to the generosity of the donors, we filled a 45-foot container that left on November 16 from a port here in New Jersey to San Juan. The container was filled with humanitarian aid for people in 2 communities in the western part of the island, Aguadilla, my hometown, and Cabo Rojo. And the aid was distributed through 2 trusted partners, the Third Presbyterian Church in Aguadilla, which was my childhood church, and also known as Tercera, and the Centro Cristiano de Restauración, a non-denominational church in Cabo Rojo. You can see here in the map. Aguadilla is the top one, and Cabo Rojo, the southern one. These churches were chosen as partners because I knew the pastors of both churches and knew how deep their arms reached out into their communities doing God's work beyond their doors. It was easy to trust that the aid would reach the people in need regardless of church affiliation. In addition, a lot of the aid that was coming to Puerto Rico was not reaching the towns in the western part of the island, nor many of the small towns throughout. After the hurricane hit Puerto Rico, the churches throughout the islands became the lifeline for many residents. They began cooking for senior centers and for people living in the low-income housing development in their communities. And they reached out to those that had suffered major damage during the hurricane. Many churches became a distribution center for survival items such as water and canned goods, diapers, baby formula, flashlights and batteries, air mattresses, clothing, items that had been donated by citizens just like you and me. More than ever, churches became the place where people came to find community, support, and hope. And when we thought we were done with the drive, we received an email from Christine Brown at Union, expressing a desire to partner with Hancock to provide help to the people of Puerto Rico. And so began an incredible partnership with you, the dedicated and generous people of Union. At the end of November, I flew to Puerto Rico with the 2 other co-chairs of the Lexington Unites for Puerto Rico drive to ensure the safe delivery of the container to our trusted partners. After 2 exhausting days negotiating the bureaucracy of Hacienda, the tax authority in the island, to get the container released from port, we were able to deliver the container to 2 partners in Aguadilla and Cabo Rojo. The truck got delayed, leaving the port in San Juan, and reached the first church in Aguadilla in the middle of the afternoon. Tercera received us with warm and grateful hearts, even as their hearts were heavy after the sudden and unexpected loss of their beloved pastor, Reverend Torres, 2 weeks before from a massive stroke. Reverend Torres had been the lead pastor coordinating the relief effort with Hancock. He was 61. After an efficient unloading of the aid designated to Tercera, we departed towards Cabo Rojo, our other partner. The sun was starting to set. We were getting worried. Cabo Rojo did not have electricity, and by the time we arrived at Cabo Rojo, it was 7 o'clock at night, pitch dark. I will never forget the instructions given by my friend Gloria on how to get to their church. You follow Route 3 straight. At the fork, you bear right, you will see a Walgreens. They have power, and so you will see some lights there, but you continue straight. You will pass 3 non-working lights, turn left on the 3rd one, and then look out for the flashlights that will be pointing you towards our parking lot. Okay, yeah, I think I got it, I told my friend. Unloading a truck in the darkness is not a small feat. The church had no electricity, no generator, and only a handful of flashlights. But what it lacked in electric power, it surpassed in spirit. If I ever have seen a group of people filled with God's grace, joy, and determination, was in Cabo Rojo. A group of about 30 people of all ages eagerly and patiently awaited for hours for the container's arrival. With the help of a front loader, a full moon, and several flashlights, a human chain formed and efficiently passed box from one person to the other until it reached the church building. It seemed fitting to be delivering the humanitarian aid in the dark in this island without electricity. By 2 o'clock the next day, El Centro Cristiano de Restauración had sorted all the groceries and packed them in bags to start distributing them in the community. Generators were prioritized for those with medical conditions, elders, families with small children, and passed to new recipients as powers got restored in the areas where the people that had received the generators lived. Extra funds were designated to purchase 2 boats for the Fishermen Association of Aguadilla, whose members had lost all of their boats in the hurricanes. And their building now rests in the water, completely destroyed. You will see that in the video. During the trip, we told my older brother that we wanted to see an area that was severely impacted by the hurricane. Without hesitation, he said, but then you must go to Punta Santiago. You can see Punta Santiago in the eastern part of the island. It was between Punta Santiago and Yabucoa that the hurricane entered Puerto Rico. Punta Santiago is a poor fisherman community of about 5,000 people on a beautiful, beautiful point in the southeastern corner of the island. It belongs to the municipality of Humacao. You can see Monkey Island and the island of Vieques from Punta Santiago's main beach and what is left of the windmills in the hills of a nearby town. As we drove into the point, you got the feeling that you were entering the movie set of a war zone. Palm trees were stripped of their green, many knocked down by the winds and piled in every which way. Houses without windows and roofs, power posts knocked down, some still standing rather tilted, as if they had stood in defiance of the heavy winds. Power lines scattered all over the place. Trees on top of houses, metal structures destroyed and their metal twisted in ways you can't even begin to imagine. In short, total devastation. We noticed the ocean as we drove into town and decided to park by the water to collect our thoughts after what we had witnessed. And thank you. I believe that God often brings us to the right places, and we just need to listen with our hearts, with our ears, and with our eyes to see and hear what He's telling us. We pray for God's wisdom and guidance on how to best use the money entrusted to us by you as we started our trip to Puerto Rico, and God help us find Punta Santiago. Unbeknown to us, we parked next to the Fishermen Association building. It was hard to recognize it as such because it had been hit pretty hard. It really was pretty battered building. We struck a conversation with a man that was just starting to prepare to paint, and after a short exchange, he asked if we had gone to the local parish and suggested that we stop there. The Nuestra Señora del Carmen Parish is housed in a small and peach-orange building, and its simple cross on the top of the tower can be seen from pretty much everywhere in town. As we approached the parish, we were greeted by Maritza, who asked if we wanted to have lunch. We graciously declined, but we asked if we could talk for a while. In our conversation, we learned that 3 weeks after the hurricane, no one came to Punta Santiago to bring aid, and that all the aid they had received up to date had come from private citizens and local businesses. The strategic location of Punta Santiago near the ocean proved disastrous during the hurricane. The waters from the ocean, the overflowing rivers, and the failed sewage plant all converged and flooded the whole town. Most people lost everything. We heard many stories of survivals. One that stayed with me was that of Antonio, who lives in a 2-story duplex next to the parish, and who in the middle of the hurricane heard the screams of his pregnant daughter and small granddaughter that lived on the first floor. Flood water had come into the house and was close to 4 feet. The force of the wind and the water prevented them from opening the door to get out. And so in the middle of the storm, Antonio faced the ferocious wind and rushing waters to start taking apart a window in his daughter's house to bring them to safety. We found out later that Antonio is the president of the local Fishermen Association. We also heard how for days the residents tried to dry their wet, bacteria-infected mattresses in the sun so they could reuse it. Many started developing skin rashes. The parish took it upon itself to start cooking hot lunches for the community, and 165 days later today, they're still providing 300 lunches a day for community people. For many, this is the only hot meal they get during the day. The parish was also able to get mattresses donated to replace the ones damaged by the hurricane. The back of the parish was turned into a community laundry, which is free to the community, open Monday through Friday, and is used by over 200 people a week. They provided canned goods and waters to people in the community and help with funds to cover medical and personal needs. Padre Jose, a young priest with very strategic mind, is interested in helping the people help themselves and revitalize the economy of this small fishing village. He has given many of the generators that were donated to the parish to the small businesses to help them reopen and provide employment and services to the community. And several of the seafood restaurants in town that support many families have reopened, providing a market for the local fishermen to sell their catch. After a long conversation with Padre Jose, it was evident that God was working through the small parish to bring help to the community. And so, Nuestra Señora del Carmen became our third partner in Puerto Rico, and where unions' generous donations have been channeled to. Our generous contribution purchased a 16-foot fiberglass boat for the Fishermen Association of Punta Santiago, which was built by a local builder and completed just this week. You provided Uh, We also bought on your behalf a generator for the Fishermen Association so they can refrigerate their fish when they come back from fishing, and provided funds to Nuestra Señora del Carmen to help with the costs associated with running the community laundry and feeding the 300 people at hot lunches 5 days a week. The impact of this hurricane in the physical and emotional lives of people is very difficult to measure, but it is deep and goes beyond not having electricity or damaged houses. The children in Punta Santiago are going to school half days because there's no power in the schools. Most of their belongings were destroyed, their toys, in the storm, and the families are slowly rebuilding. But with no electricity, half days in schools, and very few things to do, the days are very long for the kids. 2 weeks ago, I received a text from Maritza, who we first met when we went to Punta Santiago, asking if we would be able to help to get uniforms to get 2 Little League teams in town. Her text was very, very apologetic, stating that she was embarrassed to ask given all the other needs that they had in the community that were so much more important, but that she was concerned about the well-being of the children that had nothing to do. Well, Hancock Church became concerned too, and so last week we collected enough money to bring them uniforms next week and the necessary equipment to play ball. As of today, 165 days later, around a third of the island is still without power. Punta Santiago was told by the government authorities that power will likely not be restored until May or June. June is the beginning of the hurricane season. Several weeks ago, many residents received letters of denial from FEMA because they couldn't provide the needed ownership documentation for their properties. Many built houses in lots that belonged to the mother or the mother's uncle or the sister, and never received proper documentation for the house or the lot. Others lost their documentation in the flooding. Some in the community have left for the U.S. Others have left for other parts of the island where there is power because of their medical needs. But many still remain in Punta Santiago, anxious to start working again, anxious for power to be restored, eager to fix their leaky roofs and damaged houses, but with no resources or skills to do so. We hope we can bring a group of volunteers to help in the rebuilding effort soon. So keep tuned for that one. When you land in San Juan and exit the airport, you experience this sort of veneer of normalcy. Trees are greening up again. In some areas, you see newly planted fields of plantains. The mountains have that light green color that we see in the spring in New England when everything is growing after a long winter, but that you don't see very often in the Caribbean because it's tropical, and so usually you see a deep green all the time, but it's great to see even the light green. In San Juan, people are out and about, working, dealing with traffic jams exacerbated by non-operating traffic lights, dealing with periodic power outages. Many businesses are open, others are still under renovation. Inventories in the stores is adequate, but not extensive. Many of the road signs were blown away, so you'd really need to concentrate and memorize exits, or you end up doing a lot of U-turns like I have in my past few trips. There's a simple ballet-like maneuver that happens at every major intersection, especially at night, as drivers figure out on their own how to manage without traffic lights. There's some working, but not all of them are working. So, people have a remarkable combination of resilience, resignation, and above all, a deep spirituality. Puerto Rico se levanta, Puerto Rico will rise again signs are everywhere, and the sentiment is carried and expressed by so many that you meet in the island. It's common for people to give you a blessing, Dios te bendiga, when they are expressing their gratitude after receiving a word of support or a specific help. Tremendous gratitude was shown for the humanitarian aid that helped provide nourishment and support on a day-to-day basis. In addition, where people were especially moved by personal religious gifts that were provided. One such case that you'll see in the video is that of an elderly diabetic woman with heart problems who lived alone and had been without power for over 2 months. We brought to her battery-operated lanterns to replace the candles that she was using at night to provide light, as well as lots of groceries and other necessities. But what she expressed the most joy in receiving was a prayer shawl that we gave her, made by the women at Hancock. So spirituality is very deep. If there was ever a time when I fully understood Acts 20:35, it has been during this relief effort. In everything I show you, that by working hard in this manner, you must help the weak and remember the words of the Lord Jesus that he himself said, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." There certainly has been tremendous joy and satisfaction in being able to provide aid to so many that have lost so much. Union's heart has been in full view, displaying your faith in action, and you should feel so proud. You have poured your hearts out for Puerto Rico with your generous donations, and specifically for the community of Punta Santiago. We are so blessed and grateful to be partnering with you. Your contributions are making a big difference in the lives of so many in this devastated community. So on their behalf, thank you. May your individual and collective lights continue to be beacons of hope and inspiration to all of those that you touch in your life's journey. God bless you.